So today we're going to let you in on a little secret. We're going to talk about a hip alignment. Now I know we're always talking about back pain and we're always talking about, how to reduce back pain, what happens if I feel my lower back pain, what happens if I feel my shoulder back pain. And we have talked a bit about how important the hips are in stabilizing the spine and allowing that function to work and how hip imbalances can affect low back pain. But what we haven't talked about is a little secret most people don't know. What would you say if I told you that your hips impact your ankles or your knees or even your shoulders? So your upper back pain and your neck tension might be caused or contributed to by your potential hip imbalance or hip misalignment. So today we're going to talk a little bit just about how all of that actually works. We talk a little bit about fascia. For those who don't know, fascia is a connective tissue that runs throughout the whole body connecting, and there's a whole bunch of different fascial slings. We're not going to go too much into that, but the overall arching theme is that you just need to know that it's what connects your whole body. So your toe is connected to your right ear through fascia in some lens or frame. So the easiest way I can explain fascia is this. If fascia is my shirt and I pull on the fascia at my left hip because my left hip is, let's say my left hip is pulled back, so the fascia pulls back with it, what happens to the shirt over here? Well, not only is the shirt really tight at my left hip, but you see that it pulls on the fascia at my right shoulder, which over time creates micro shifts of the shoulder coming in and forward. So what this does is now it knocks my shoulder joint out of alignment. There's a lot of different joint function testing we do, but if you want to figure out right now if you have shoulder pain during an exercise, if it's being contributed to by your hips, easiest way I can get you to do this, let's say you have a lat raise that you're doing with a dumbbell and you get a weird popping or an instability. I want you to try it sitting down on the bench. Sit down on the bench and see if that popping or that instability goes away. Does it feel better? If it does feel better, there's a pretty good chance that what's actually contributing to your to your shoulder pain is your hips. Now when you do this, obviously make sure, like every other exercise, even though you're sitting, posture yourself properly, brace your core, and go through the motion the exact same way you would if you were standing. You're just now sitting, so you're taking something out of the equation, seeing if it feels better. Now, what do we do if we have hip imbalances? Well, as always, first we assess. There's a tool we have that we've probably shared to you if you're seeing this video that helps you track and assess your back pain. But part of that is going to be, okay, well, where am I getting the pain? Because where you're getting the pain isn't always the main thing contributing to the pain. So we've got to track it, and we've got to try things, we've got to experiment. We don't have imaging. If you have access to imaging, obviously go to a doctor, obviously go to a physio, obviously use that imaging. If you have the ability, it will expedite most of this process. But if you don't, well, we have to do trial and error. So what this sheet will help you do is track not only the pain, but where is the pain, and has the pain been getting better or worse as you're doing what you're doing, so that way you can actively be your own doctor or your own physician and kind of start whittling down what works for you and for your body. Now, the way fascia connects our shoulder to our hip is the same way that fascia connects our hip to our ankle or to our knee. So let's say a lot of us have very tight adductors, or the inside of the upper thigh. So if that's super, super tight, what happens is that muscle is typically tightened into shortened position. So that muscle's constantly like this, and it's pulling the knee closer to the midline of the body, which right away knocks the knee out of alignment. Or for most people, it might even go as far as knock knee, and when your knees are pretty much touching each other as you go through movements. And what that does is that simple hinge joint of the knee now can't hinge properly, and it actually pulls out of alignment, causing the kneecap to track incorrectly, which then creates rubbing, which leads to things like knee replacements and stuff if at its most severe if left unchecked. But the other thing is it still travels down as that inside of the upper thigh is tight and pulls your knee in. Well, over time, it'll continue that posture even further down, leading to a pronated ankle, or an ankle that wants to roll and cave in all the time. Now, our sensory base that's always touching the ground, that's responsible for us being able to stand upright and all the evolutionary patterns that led us to be successful humans, our feet are now constantly unstable and constantly wanting to wiggle, move, slip, slide. And what this does is now it carries all the way up, creates a lot of tension in the feet, creates crazy amounts of tension in the legs, which you've heard of plantar fasciitis and all these other things. And now your body doesn't feel stable, it doesn't feel secure. Your knee and your hip are now impacting your hip and your ankle are now impacting your knee to move incorrectly, and it just travels all the way up. So the hips being at that part of the core of the body, even though when we think core, we usually talk about the six pack. Well, no, it includes the glutes, the hip flexors, everything there. It's the core for a reason, because it's where all of our movement should come from, is this core part of our body. And if it's not working right, it's not balanced right, things are going to move different. We've talked a lot about how, a lot of us bend from the spine instead of the hips like we're supposed to. But keep in mind that shoulder pain, again, the way fascia works, if things are misaligned, it's going to pull something else out of alignment, and vice versa. It works both ways. So what we can do the most is, step one, make sure that our joints are functioning the way they're supposed to. Step two, strengthen them so that way they're ready for any real life position, and that way they don't get knocked out of alignment prior. Don't just do your squats, do your lunges. I know lunges are something not a lot of people like, but working single side motions, especially if you don't have someone to assess your hips, is a really good general rule of thumb. Work all of it. If you don't know, hit it all. If something hurts, don't do it. If it feels good, do it. If you feel better after, do it. If you feel terrible after, maybe reassess what you're doing. But the biggest point, single leg movements as well as double leg movements. But again, if you don't know, do 2 single leg movements for every 1 leg movement, and then strengthen all the muscles around. So we got to strengthen pushing our knees out, pulling our knees in, our adduction and abduction, hip flexion, hip extension. We've got to work on all these things. The stronger our hips are, the longer, happier, and healthier lives we can live. So let's strive for this together.